You're listening to Dark Rain Chronicles. The rain hides many things, but it also remembers. Secrets washed away, voices swallowed by the storm. These are the stories it brings back, and tonight, you will hear them. The first time the ciphers bloomed into existence, reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. They materialized unbidden, shimmering just above the crowns of oblivious heads, like strange, spectral diadems. I blinked, squeezed my eyelids tight, rubbed furiously at my temples. Futile gestures against an impossible sight. Yet they remained, pulsing softly, woven into the fabric of my vision. It began on a Tuesday, utterly unremarkable, until it wasn't. Wedged into the metallic belly of the morning train, a tide of commuters pressing close, I registered a faint azure luminescence hovering near the woman beside me. As my gaze sharpened, the light resolved into a distinct figure. 43. Bewilderment spiked through me. Had the pre-dawn coffee been brewed too strong? Then, another numeral flared above a man lost in the glow of his phone. 78. And another, a vibrant 16, floated over a youth whose hair was dyed the improbable blue of a tropical bird. A chilling realization dawned. Everyone shared this phenomenon, these ethereal markers. Everyone but me. Disembarking felt like stepping onto alien soil, my thoughts a chaotic whirl. The 2-block pilgrimage to my office became a gauntlet of floating digits. Some were modest single figures, others sprawled into the hundreds. Their colors varied too, the common azure, but also verdant greens, sunny yellows, even a stark arterial red that prickled with unease. By the time I collapsed into my office chair, the conviction of imminent mental collapse felt absolute. Calling in unwell, retreating home, perhaps arranging an urgent consultation with a mind healer, these thoughts clamored for attention. Yet, as I surveyed my colleagues, each adorned with their own spectral number, an odd quiescence settled over me. If this was madness, it possessed an unnerving internal logic. I defaulted to my training, the meticulous analyst within taking charge. A log was initiated, notations of numerals alongside observations of the individuals they adorned. Initially, chaos reigned. The figures seemed arbitrary, untethered to age, sex, or station. But days bled into weeks, revealing a subtle dynamism. The numbers weren't immutable sigils. They ebbed and flowed, mostly glacially, sometimes with startling swiftness. I tracked my manager's figure descending from 89 to 88 across 7 days. My desk mates leaped from 32 to 45, seemingly overnight. The cipher cracked roughly a fortnight into this surreal existence. I was sharing lunch with Clara, my closest confidant, her own 62 wavering slightly as she recounted the bitter dissolution of her latest romance. As venom tinged her words about her ex, I saw it dip. 61. Then, shifting topic to a nascent passion, a pottery class, it climbed back, reclaiming 62. Illumination struck, sudden and complete. These weren't random integers, they were metrics, quantifying something intrinsic. A measure that swelled with contentment and purpose, and withered with distress or inertia. A sort of psychic barometer gauging the soul's weather. The precise scale remained elusive, but the principle felt undeniable. Possessed of this key, the world rearranged itself before my eyes. Latent patterns emerged. The vagrant near the station, perpetually offering gentle greetings, bore a consistent 72, surpassing many of the impeccably dressed executives striding past. The barista whose smile seemed professionally laminated. Her 23 whispered a narrative contrary to her cheerful facade. An obsession took root, a fixation on observing these fluctuations, decoding the catalysts for their rise and fall. I witnessed numerals plummet in the wake of heartbreak, soar following career triumphs. I watched a woman's 40 vault to 65 when a stranger retrieved her scattered groceries. Yet, understanding bore the crushing gravity of responsibility. What was my role in this silent spectacle? Was intervention warranted when a number spiraled perilously low? Did I bear an obligation to elevate these invisible scores? The universe provided an answer about a month after the phenomenon began. Walking home under the cloak of late evening, I spotted a young man slumped on a park bench. His number was a deep, throbbing crimson. 3. The nadir of anything I'd yet witnessed. His posture radiated defeat, a physical manifestation of despair that tripped alarms within me. Impulse overriding ingrained social reticence, I approached. "Evening," I offered, striving for nonchalance. "Everything all right?" He flinched, startled eyes meeting mine. Yeah, fine." Ignoring the city's unspoken rule about engaging strangers in nocturnal parks, I sat beside him. "You sure? You look like you might be carrying something heavy." Silence stretched, his number flickering precariously between 2 and 3. Then the dam broke. Words spilled out. Job loss, accumulating debts, a crushing sense of inadequacy, the suffocating weight of hopelessness. As he spoke, I watched his number, a knot of fear tightening in my chest, terrified it might extinguish entirely, though the consequences remained terrifyingly unknown. But then, something akin to a miracle unfolded. As he unburdened himself, as I simply listened, offering what meager solace I could muster, his number began an ascent, tentative at first, then gaining momentum. By the time his story concluded, it rested at 15. Still fragile, but the alarming crimson had faded. "Thanks," he murmured, rising to leave. "Don't know why, but I feel lighter, like maybe it's not completely hopeless." I watched him retreat, his 15 holding steady, a profound mix of relief and awe washing over me. I had altered something, minutely, perhaps, but undeniably. That encounter became a turning point. Helping, where feasible, became my quiet mandate. Direct confrontation wasn't always necessary. Often, small kindnesses sufficed. Paying for the coffee of the person queued behind me, offering a sincere compliment to a stressed colleague, dedicating hours at a local shelter. With each act, I observed numerals lift, sometimes only by a point or two, yet the effect was tangible. It wasn't a panacea. There were instances where, despite every effort, the decline was inexorable. I bore witness as Aunt Maeve's number dwindled steadily throughout her valiant struggle with illness, settling at a serene 5 before she slipped away. I saw relationships fracture, aspirations crumble, the numerical toll starkly visible. And always, the persistent query, why me? Why this singular perception? a divine endowment, a cruel jest, some cosmic clerical error. Answers remained elusive, replaced only by an intensifying weight of duty. As months spun into a year, another transformation became apparent, this one internal. Empathy bloomed within me, a heightened sensitivity to the subtle currents of human emotion. I began to recognize the precursors of a falling number, even without the visual cue. The tension in a smile, the slump of shoulders, the cadence of a weary voice. My listening became more profound, my friendships richer, my engagement with the community more authentic. This enhanced emotional acuity unexpectedly benefited my career, fostering better collaboration, shrewder leadership. A novel sense of fulfillment permeated my existence. It was nearly 12 months after the ciphers first manifested that I chanced upon my reflection in a polished storefront window and audibly gasped. There, suspended above my own reflection's head, was a number, 89, resolute, vibrant blue. In that instant, clarity dawned. The numbers weren't a sentence to madness or a burden of omniscience. They were a lesson in compassion, in the intricate web of mutual influence, in the profound necessity of human connection. I still perceive the numbers. I continue my quiet efforts to nudge them upward. But now, it's underpinned by the understanding that we are intrinsically linked, nodes in a vast, complex network of interaction. Every kind utterance, every shared moment of genuine presence propagates ripples unseen but intensely real. Whether the numbers will ever fade, or if another perceiver exists somewhere in the world, remains unknown. But this much I know. Even if they dissolved tomorrow, my path would remain unchanged, because I now grasp the truth they were sent to illuminate. We each possess the power to shape the well-being of others, for good or ill. Every encounter, however fleeting, holds the potential to adjust that invisible tally. And ultimately, isn't that the essence of living? Not merely the chasing of personal bliss, but the conscious cultivation of joy and solace in the lives we touch. So, the next time your path crosses another's, remember, you might be altering their number. Make it count. A peculiar affinity for relics, for the tangible vestiges of bygone eras, drew me to antiquities. Not for provenance, nor for speculated worth, but for the simple honesty of wear, the patina etched by time itself. It was this yearning for authenticity, a weariness of the glossy reproductions cluttering weekend yard sales, that propelled me toward a nondescript auction house one arbitrary Saturday. Amidst the usual fare, a grandfather clock shrouded in dust, a porcelain vase bearing hairline fractures, canvases faded into obscurity. My gaze snagged on something else entirely. There, sequestered against a far wall, away from the curated displays, stood the looking glass. Its frame, fashioned from some dark, indeterminate wood, bore the scars of age. The glass itself was webbed with fine cracks near its periphery. Ponderous it looked, intricately carved with motifs that hinted at vines or blossoms, obscured by grime and shadow. It possessed no conventional beauty, yet it commanded my attention. That, I thought, a flicker of possessiveness igniting within me, is singular. I must have it. A swift lift of my paddle, a negligible sum exchanged. No other soul registered its presence, their eyes sliding past it as if it occupied a blind spot in their perception. Securing its passage home proved an unforeseen challenge, its weight far exceeding my estimation. Auction hands grunted as they helped lever it onto the bed of my truck. My own residence, an old structure acquired some years prior, offered refuge, particularly its vast attic, a realm of groaning floorboards and perpetual twilight. The mirror, I decided, belonged there, at least for the nonce. Space constraints below were a convenient excuse. A deeper, unvoiced disquiet steered it away from the house's heart, toward the shadows where it seemed intrinsically aligned. Alone, I wrestled it upward via a narrow side stairwell leading directly into the attic's gloom. Even through gloves, the frame felt peculiar, a gritty texture, a residue clinging stubbornly to the wood. Finally propped against a raftered wall, I stood, hands on hips, breath ragged in the stillness. The single, bare bulb overhead cast a jaundiced glow, accentuating the mirror's antiquity. Tiny black blemishes peppered the silvering, voids where the backing had surrendered. Shifting my stance sent ripples of darkness across my reflected face. Unsettling, yes, but I dismissed it, descending back into the familiar hum of the lower floors. Days dissolved into the rhythm of work, the mirror receding into the attic's dusty oblivion. Then came an evening errand, retrieving stored luggage. Ascending into the upper dimness, I flicked the switch. As I traversed the floorboards toward the storage corner, a sound brushed past my ear, a sibilance, soft as escaping breath. I froze. Drafts, vermin scrabbling within the walls, plausible in this aging house. Yet the sound had been intimate, immediate. It ceased the instant I stilled. My eyes scanned the cluttered space, lingering on the mirror. Nothing stirred. Depositing the suitcases, I cast one last glance around before retreating. Reaching the stairwell's threshold, it returned. A faint hiss, undeniably close. I pivoted sharply. Only the mirror met my gaze, my own form captured within its tarnished depths, subtly distorted by the angle and the weak light. A knot tightened in my gut. My pulse quickened. I remained motionless, straining to decipher the silence, but the moment passed. I fled downstairs. Sleep offered little respite that night. The conviction lingered. The whisper had emanated from the glass. Preposterous, yet the proximity haunted me. Old wood settles, houses breathed. Rationalizations whispered against a rising tide of unease. I found myself glancing upward whenever I passed the attic door, half expecting that faint, breathy sound. My next ascent was purposeful, seeking forgotten photograph albums tucked away in a box. The moment I pushed the door inward, a palpable chill permeated the air, stale and heavy. The overhead bulb flickered erratically, fraying my already taut nerves. I navigated toward the far wall where the boxes lay, a route that took me past the mirror. And there it was again, the susurration. This time, impossibly, it seemed to shape itself around my name, Elias. Not clearly articulated, more an exhaled intonation. Yet the recognition struck cold. I swallowed, glancing sideways at the glass. My reflection appeared ordinary, yet the fine hairs on my arms prickled erect. A primal urge to flee warred with the task at hand. Snatching the box, I hurried back, the sensation of being watched pressing upon the nape of my neck. Closing the attic door felt like sealing a tomb. I leaned against the hallway wall, heart hammering, a wave of dizziness washing over me. It's just an old I murmured, the words tasting like lies. The ensuing nights frayed my sleep further. Vague, unsettling dreams plagued me. Dreams of reflections moving asynchronously, of a disconnect from my own mirrored image. Waking in a cold sweat, grasping only the lingering dread, became routine. Come the weekend, resolve hardened within me. Enough ambiguity. Flashlight clutched like a talisman, despite the functioning bulb. I marched determinedly upstairs. Silence greeted me in the attic. The mirror stood impassive. I planted myself before it, scrutinizing my reflection. Fatigue shadowed my eyes. My hair was unkempt. It was undeniably me. Yet an unnerving sense persisted, an awareness of something else observing from within the silvered plane. My pulse surged, my limbs stiffening. I swayed slightly, side to side. The image followed faithfully. No lag, no aberration. Leaning closer, my face inches from the glass, I noted the minute scratches marring the surface, the dull sheen of the varnish on the frame. I tapped the glass lightly with a knuckle. A flat, hollow sound responded. Then a distinct creak from the floorboards directly behind me. I spun around, flashlight beams slicing the dimness. Nothing. Emptiness. Teeth gritted, I snapped back to face the mirror. For an infinitesimal fraction of a second, I could have sworn the reflection completed its turn, a beat slower than I had. The perception was so fleeting, so uncertain, yet it left me breathless. Sweat trickled down my temple. Retreating slowly, fighting the instinct to bolt, I turned and descended, hands trembling so violently I had to cling to the banister. Dismissing it became impossible. Subsequent ventures into the attic were invariably punctuated by faint whispers. Sometimes, a flicker at the edge of vision within the glass, a shadow, a shape, when I knew I stood perfectly still. My heart would seize, and I would abandon my errand, retreating hastily. Avoidance became strategy. The attic remained undisturbed unless necessity dictated otherwise. One night, returning late and weary from a friend's gathering, a foolish impulse seized me. Perhaps a draft was the culprit. A simple explanation lurking undiscovered. Armed with a small toolkit, exhaustion momentarily overriding apprehension, I climbed the stairs. Each tread seemed amplified, creaking ominously in the hushed house. I eased the attic door open. The bulb remained unlit, plunging the space into near-total darkness. My flashlight beam swept across familiar shapes, stacked boxes, shrouded furniture, the mirror. All appeared static. I moved along the walls, probing for cracks, for sources of airflow. A faint coolness brushed my cheek, yet its origin remained elusive. Muttering about my own foolishness, I turned the beam toward the mirror. My reflection stared back, starkly illuminated, almost bleached by the intense light. But something was wrong. The contours of my head seemed misaligned. Lowering the flashlight slightly, squinting through the gloom, the truth struck cold. The reflection wasn't perfectly superimposed upon my own form. I shifted sideways. The image lagged, a palpable hesitation before it mirrored my movement. My knees buckled. A vice gripped my chest, tremors racking my body. I stumbled backward and the reflection snapped into alignment, yet the expression mirrored there. My own face held a subtle wrongness, an alien cast. Breath failed me. Mouth dry, sweat blooming on my forehead. I stood paralyzed, caught between the desperate urge to escape and the terrifying compulsion to watch, convinced that turning my back would invite catastrophe. My flashlight sputtered, the beam flickering wildly. I smacked it against my palm. In the brief, intervening darkness, a whisper sounded, sharp and undeniable, directly beside my ear. Panic detonated. I scrambled for the door. As my hand grasped the knob, a puff of frigid air, like a spectral breath, touched the back of my neck. I slammed the door shut, the sound echoing in the sudden silence, and plunged down the stairs, not stopping until I reached the relative safety of the living room, bathing the space in artificial light. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. The whisper replayed in my mind, intimate and chillingly clear, unmistakably shaping my name, Ilias. Huddled on the couch, nerves screaming, every settling groan of the old house became a source of fresh terror. For days, the attic became a non-place, its existence mentally walled off. Life continued. Work, television, meals. But beneath the surface, fear coiled. Sleep remained elusive, often punctuated by keeping the bedroom light burning against the encroaching darkness. Nightmares became nightly visitations, my reflection gazing back with eyes that were not my own. I'd wake, drenched and trembling, clinging to the mantra, "It's only a dream," while the chilling reality of the attic pulsed just overhead. Last week, defiance stirred. The feeling of being besieged within my own home became intolerable. I resolved to neutralize the threat, or at least its focal point. Fetching a large, heavy sheet, the plan formed. Cover the mirror, blind its gaze. Ignoring the tremor in my legs, I ascended once more. The attic air hung thick and still, the single bulb casting a feeble, expiring light. I strode directly toward the mirror, consciously tuning out a faint, sibilant sound that seemed to greet my approach. With a decisive heave, I draped the sheet over the glass, tucking the edges firmly around the ornate frame. Stepping back, breathing hard, I surveyed my handiwork. No reflection, just an amorphous, fabric-shrouded form. A measure of relief washed through me, my heartbeat steadying. "There," I muttered, the sound loud in the quiet. Finished. I retreated downstairs. That night brought the first semblance of unbroken sleep in weeks. A single disturbance around 3 in the morning. My name whispered, muffled, distant. But it faded quickly, and slumber reclaimed me. The following day felt lighter, less fraught. I watched a film without constantly scanning the periphery. Perhaps, I dared to hope, concealment was enough. 2 nights ago shattered that illusion. Around midnight, a loud thump resonated from overhead. I bolted upright in bed, heart instantly hammering. Silence. Then another heavy impact, followed by a protracted scraping noise, like something weighty being dragged across the floorboards. Bile rose in my throat. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening. The sounds ceased, replaced by a silence pregnant with menace. Should I investigate? Grasping the heavy flashlight again, I crept upwards, each step a conscious effort against mounting dread. My breath hitched, my hands shook. At the attic door, I paused, then pushed it open slowly. Darkness. The bulb had finally died. My flashlight beam cut through the black, finding the sheet first, crumpled on the floorboards at the mirror's base. The mirror itself was canted forward, displaced by a foot or more from the wall, as if deliberately moved. My mouth turned to dust. I edged into the room, light sweeping the emptiness. No intruder. only the cold, musty air and the oppressive silence. It couldn't have simply slid, not on that rough wood, not with its sheer weight. Impossible. As I knelt to retrieve the fallen sheet, the whisper returned, startlingly close, eliciting an involuntary cry. I stumbled backward, colliding with a stack of boxes that tumbled with a clatter. Cursing under my breath, my gaze remained locked on the mirror. I aimed the flashlight directly at the glass. My reflection stared back, but it was wrong. Terribly wrong. It blinked a full second after I did. Panic seized me utterly. My eyes darted toward the stairs. Escape. But the terrifying need to watch held me captive. I edged sideways along the wall, keeping the mirror in my peripheral vision. With each lateral shift, the reflection's delay grew more pronounced. By the time I reached the door, I was trembling uncontrollably, the flashlight nearly slipping from my grasp. I risked a final glance back, then turned and fled, slamming the door behind me. I haven't been back up. Sleep comes in fitful, shallow bursts, punctuated by phantom noises. A persistent tightness constricts my chest whenever my thoughts drift upwards. The image of that uncovered mirror, standing a sentinel in the dark, is a torment. The lag. The terrifying lag in the reflection felt like deliberate defiance, like something alien inhabiting my own image, testing its autonomy. I imagine it watching from the silver depths, waiting. Sometimes, could swear I hear faint footfalls pacing the attic floor. Last night, a low murmur, disturbingly like my name, seemed to drift down from the ceiling. What resides within that glass, and why it fixates on me, remains terrifyingly opaque. Curses, hauntings, concepts I once dismissed, now feel chillingly plausible. The situation is untenable, yet paralysis grips me. Smashing it feels like unleashing something worse. Retrieving it is unthinkable. I feel cornered, yet I strive for a semblance of calm. The television murmurs through the night, a flimsy shield against the silence and the thoughts that breed within it. Each dawn feels like a reprieve, yet the dread remains. I know action is necessary, but the courage eludes me. I wait, listening, trying not to imagine what happens if my reflection tires of its prison, if it decides to step out from behind the glass. Sleep offered no sanctuary. The first time he materialized at my bedside, a tear in the fabric of my bedroom's darkness, I dismissed him as a phantom limb of a nightmare. His silhouette, stark and motionless, etched itself against the gloom. A blink, a shuddering intake of breath, and the space he occupied was empty once more. If only the dread that lingered had whispered the truth. This was no dream's fading echo, but the overture to a waking terror. Barely a month had passed since I'd sought refuge in this apartment. It was unassuming. A compact flat tucked away on a street that whispered more than it spoke. The rent, almost suspiciously gentle, should have sounded an alarm. Yet, emerging raw from the wreckage of a relationship, I craved sanctuary above all else. When the landlord, a Mr. Thorne, conducted the viewing, his gaze had a habit of snagging on things, on me, for beats too long. He navigated the space with an unnerving familiarity, as if tracing memories onto the air. But my relief was a thick veil, obscuring the warning signs. The initial weeks unfolded with deceptive calm. Cardboard skeletons were banished, possessions found their niches, and the fragile scaffolding of a new life began to rise. Then, subtle dissonances began to fray the edges of my days. A novel, definitively left splayed on the low table, would reappear primly on its shelf. The milk carton felt lighter than anticipated. My preferred ceramic mug, usually nested by the kettle, would migrate to an unfamiliar cupboard. I attributed these slips to the fog of exhaustion, the long hours demanded by a new job. Stress, I reasoned, was making me porous, forgetful. Yet the unease persisted, coalescing from vague suspicion into a palpable presence. Other inconsistencies surfaced. Returning from work, the apartment's atmosphere sometimes felt altered, disturbed, as if the stillness itself held its breath after an intrusion. An alien scent occasionally clung to the air, faintly fungal, like damp earth and old secrets. Once, deep in the night's velvet hush, the distinct cadence of footsteps sounded in the corridor outside my bedroom. Heart hammering, I rose to investigate, only to find the narrow hall steeped in an undisturbed silence. It was perhaps 3 weeks into this unsettling rhythm when I awoke to the chill kiss of night air. My bedroom window gaped open, an inviolable habit born of ground floor vulnerability was to lock it fast each night. A tremor traced its icy path down my spine as I rose to secure it. And there, stark against the worn carpet just inside the frame, lay a damp, earthen sigil, a footprint. A frantic drummer took up residence beneath my ribs. My mind scrambled for explanations. A shadow, a trick of the low light. But intuition, cold and sharp, pierced through the denial. Someone had trespassed into my sleeping space. The summoned constabulary offered professional sympathy, but little else. No forced entry, no latent prints, nothing pilfered. They gently proposed I might have forgotten the lock, tracked the mud in myself. Their logic was neat, plausible. I nodded, wanting desperately to embrace their mundane explanation. Yet a deeper certainty resonated within me. They were mistaken. Sleep became a foreign country that night. Each settling groan of the old building, each sigh of wind against the glass, jolted me into rigid alertness, pulse thundering in my ears. It was during one such vigil, suspended between exhaustion and hyper-awareness, that I saw him properly for the first time. A column of denser shadow detached itself from the gloom at my bed's end, utterly still. A choked gasp escaped me as my hand flailed for the bedside lamp. The sudden flare of light banished him, leaving only the frantic pounding of my own heart in the empty room. Imagination, I told myself fiercely. Stress and sleeplessness conjuring specters. But the visitation left an indelible residue of fear. My nightly ritual intensified. Locks checked and rechecked. A sturdy chair wedged beneath the bedroom doorknob. The thought of flight, breaking the lease, the upheaval of another move, felt paralyzing. Instead, a different resolve hardened within me. I acquired a discreet sentinel, masquerading as a bedside clock, its tiny lens aimed to survey the room. If my sanctuary was being violated, I would capture the violator. For 3 nights, the camera recorded only my own restless slumber. The 4th night delivered the venom. I woke to the insistent bleat of my alarm, moved through the motions of morning, and left for the day. Only upon returning that evening, weary and wanting solace, did I remember the silent witness. The images that scrolled across my phone screen turned my blood to ice. The recording began innocuously, my sleeping form beneath the duvet. Then, around the nadir of the night, 2:30 a.m., the bedroom door drifted inward with excruciating slowness. A figure slipped through the opening, moving with a spectral grace that chilled me to the marrow. Mr. Thorne, my landlord. He paused, a statue in the dim light, simply observing me. Then, his slow pilgrimage began. His fingers traced the contours of my belongings, the bristles of my hairbrush, the spine of the book beside my bed, like a blind man learning a forbidden text. He eased open the closet, his hand brushing against my clothes, and I slept on, utterly vulnerable, oblivious. After an eternity compressed into 10 minutes, he approached the bed. Horror held me captive as I watched his recorded self bow over my sleeping form, his face scant inches from mine. He remained there, suspended, just looking. Then, as soundlessly as he had arrived, he retreated and was gone. Nausea surged, hot and acrid. The violation felt physical, a contamination of my innermost space. Beneath the revulsion, however, another heat began to build. A cold, sharp fury. The audacity. How many nights, how many others had endured this silent, creeping terror? "Police!" instinct screamed, but a sliver of doubt held me back. The footage was damning, yet what if disbelief prevailed again? What if Thorne, alerted, escalated? No, I needed irrefutable proof, an undeniable capture. A plan, desperate and dangerous, took shape. The following night, I mimicked my usual bedtime routine, extinguishing the lights, settling beneath the covers. But sleep was banished. Every nerve ending thrummed. Every muscle remained coiled, waiting. The hours stretched, taut and silent. Just as hope began to fray, I heard it. The faint metallic click of the front door yielding. My heart threatened to batter its way out of my chest. "Breathe," I commanded myself. Slow, even breaths, as soft footfalls whispered closer. The bedroom door eased open. I lay perfectly still, sensing his proximity, the shift in the air near the bed. Then, in a single, explosive movement, I surged upright and slammed my hand down on the lamp switch. Impaled by the sudden glare, Mr. Thorne stood utterly still. A flicker of surprise, then something else shifted behind his eyes. A smile bloomed on his face, devoid of warmth, full of jagged edges. "Awake, are we?" His voice, a low murmur, was horribly placid. "Leave," I managed, astonished by the steadiness that fortified my own voice. "Leave now, or I call the police." A low chuckle rumbled in his chest, deeply unsettling. "And report what, precisely?" "Your landlord exercising his right of entry. Permitted, you know. Check your lease." My hand darted towards my phone on the nightstand, but he moved with startling speed. His fingers clamped around my wrist, a vice of surprising strength. "I shouldn't, if I were you," he advised, the placidity fracturing, revealing something raw and sharp beneath. "You can't imagine the things I'm capable of." In that instant, the full gravity of my peril struck me. This wasn't mere intrusion. It was predation. He was unmoored from reason, and I was cornered. But victimhood was a garment I refused to wear again. My free hand seized the heavy lamp base. With all the strength fear lent me, I swung. The impact against his skull echoed with a wet, percussive sound. He staggered, grip loosening. I didn't pause. I bolted from the room, across the small living area, my fingers scrabbling at the stubborn front door lock. Behind me, a choked curse, the unsteady thud of his pursuit drawing closer. The lock finally gave. I exploded into the relative safety of the corridor, down the stairs, taking them in frantic leaps, not risking a backward glance. The cold night air hit my face as I ran, pounding the pavement until the reassuring blue light of the police station, 2 blocks distant, swam into view. Gasping, trembling, I spilled the entire nightmare. This time armed with the chilling video evidence on my phone, they believed. Officers were dispatched. The subsequent investigation revealed my ordeal was merely one thread in a larger, darker tapestry woven by Thorn. Burglaries, stalking, a pattern of predatory behavior across the city. He resides now behind bars, awaiting the law's slow grinding. Yet sometimes the deep silence of the night fractures, and I wake with the phantom sensation of eyes upon me. That apartment is a ghost in my past. I inhabit a different space now, across town. Vigilance is my new shadow. Locks are tested, curtains remain drawn. Some might label it paranoia. I call it the architecture of survival, because the childhood specters, the things beneath the bed, were merely shadows. The true grotesques wear familiar faces, offer keys, and murmur about lease agreements. They thrive in the unexamined corners, in the polite silences. And sometimes, the only recourse is to drag them into the unforgiving glare, to expose the malignancy hiding in plain sight. It is a terrifying act, stripping away the veneer of normalcy. But it is essential. Left unchallenged, they remain, watching from the periphery, waiting. So, heed that prickle of unease, the internal alarm that signals dissonance. Trust that visceral knowledge. Do not fear switching on the light. Sometimes confronting the darkness is the only way to command the monsters to retreat. Monday brought Silas to the farmhouse beneath a bruised, heavy sky. The wind pressed against the car like a physical weight as he cut the engine. 2 duffels occupied the passenger seat. A laptop case was cinched over his shoulder. Before disturbing the quiet with unloading, he circled the structure. Its skin was ancient, the paint flaking away like sunburned flesh. Fissures spiderwebbing near the window frames. The front porch sagged, its planks warped. A single step canted drunkenly. Beyond lay acreage choked with waist-high grass tangled in dilapidated fencing. Skeletal trees clawed at the distance. And out there, impaled in the earth, stood the sentinels. 3 scarecrows, their straw-stuffed heads angled toward the bruised horizon. He registered their presence, a trio, widely spaced, nothing more than rustic fixtures. Solitude for the sake of prose was the mission. Aberrant phenomena were not on the itinerary. As twilight bled into the gray, Silas hauled his belongings across the threshold. The farmhouse exhaled a musty breath. Austerity defined the interior. A meager living space furnished with a slumped couch, a lone armchair, a low table. To the right, the kitchen offered a humming, archaic refrigerator and a gas stove coated in the ghosts of meals past. The bedroom, a tight cell, held only a narrow bed and a scarred dresser. In the bathroom, the sink coughed and spat rust-tinged water when tested. He moved through the rooms, flicking switches. Filaments flared erratically, some buzzing like trapped insects, others flickering with roomy indecision. Each footfall drew groans from the floorboards. Every door whined on corroded hinges. A pervasive dampness clung to the air, the scent of aged wood perpetually weeping after rain. He dismissed it, establishing his digital beachhead on the worn kitchen table, arranging his notes like talismans against the encroaching quiet. Later, with the day finally surrendering to shadow, he returned to the porch, leaning against the railing. Its surface bit at his hand, rough and splintered. His gaze swept the darkening fields, probing the gloom for any deviation from the norm. Silence reigned, thick and expectant. The tall grasses whispered, swaying in a barely perceptible current. The scarecrows maintained their vigil, static silhouettes against the deepening indigo. No motion betrayed any hidden life. Only the faint susurrus of unseen leaves disturbed the stillness. Deep into the night, fingers poised over the keyboard. A distinct creak fractured the quiet. Silas froze, listening. The sound emanated from the front porch, the unmistakable protest of weight settling on a loose board. He peered through the window pane. Nothing disturbed the moon-washed emptiness of the porch. The night sky was a scatter of stars, devoid of wind. He remained at the window, vigilant. Again, the timber groaned, an articulate complaint from unoccupied wood. He eased the door open, scanning the warped planks. No impressions marred the dusty surface. Retreating, he secured the lock. Back at the table, another sound insinuated itself. A faint, rhythmic dripping. He rose, tracking the sound through the small house. The kitchen faucet was mute. The bathroom sink and shower head remained dry beads on porcelain. Outside, the night was parched. His eyes traced the ceiling. No stains, no dampness. Yet the drip, drip, drip persisted. A maddeningly steady cadence seemingly birthed from within the very bones of the house, perhaps the walls themselves. He hunted it, opening cabinets, pressing his ear to plaster, crouching low. The source remained elusive, a phantom metronome. Defeated, he surrendered, attempting to wall off the sound and return to his work. Sleep offered little refuge. The mattress was unforgiving, his rest fractured by phantom footfalls skittering just beyond the walls, sounds that dissolved whenever he dared to look. Dawn arrived pale and uncertain. Stepping outside, Silas surveyed the fields. A cold knot tightened in his gut. The three scarecrows occupied new stations. He clearly recalled them gazing out toward the open land the previous evening. Now, one swiveled its eyeless head toward the farmhouse itself. Another faced the desolate road, and the third stood oddly slumped, its straw pate bowed as if in contemplation or despair. A frown etched itself onto his face as he trudged closer. Proximately, they seemed innocuous. Tattered garments bulging with desiccated straw, broad hats shadowing featureless faces. He reached out, fingertips brushing coarse fabric, confirming the dry rustle within. No tangible proof existed of their nocturnal migration, yet an unshakable conviction settled upon him. They had shifted. Their alignment was wrong. The afternoon bled away at the keyboard, the front door deliberately left ajar, braced by a chair, a concession to his unease, allowing swift glances outward. Around noon, a sound drifted from the fields, low and resonant. Not speech, but something akin to a drawn-out sigh or a subterranean hum. Silas pushed open the door, stepping onto the groaning porch. Before him, the tall grasses rippled and bowed, executing a strange ballet despite the air's profound stillness. The vegetation undulated, suggesting the passage of something substantial beneath its surface. He strained his eyes, but the catalyst remained unseen. Only the hypnotic rise and fall of the green blades betraying its presence. The scarecrows dotted the expanse, inert, though one seemed canted at a peculiar angle he hadn't noticed before. He ventured cautiously into the grass, closing the distance. Mere feet from the figure, the ambient warmth abruptly leached away. Gooseflesh prickled his arms. The scarecrow's head. Was it imagination? Or was it now subtly angled toward him? The shift was too slight, too uncertain to confirm. He reached out, nudging its shoulder. It stood fast, impaled rigidly on its stake. Retreating, Silas sought the dubious sanctuary of the house. As dusk thickened, Silas fought to immerse himself in his manuscript, wrestling a few paragraphs onto the page before the house resumed its unsettling chorus. First, the familiar lament of the porch. Then, a new sound, a delicate, almost furtive tapping against the front door. He peered through the window, his own reflection staring back from the darkened pane. Beyond it, near the skeletal fence line, a silhouette detached itself from the gloom. Too distant for detail, yet its proportions felt wrong. Taller than a man, strangely stooped, with limbs that seemed unnaturally long. It slid between the trees, a fleeting shadow, and was gone. He remained frozen, scanning the tree line, but the shape did not reappear. Later, ensconced in the meager light of the living room lamp, a flicker of movement drew his eye to the glass pane of the back door. A face, pressed close. He recoiled, nearly tumbling from his chair. It was pallid, ephemeral, its features indistinct as if viewed through frosted glass or swirling mist. A bare suggestion of eyes, a mouth. It lingered for a heartbeat, then dissolved, leaving only a faint bloom of condensation on the cold glass, like residual breath, which swiftly evaporated. He lunged for the door, wrenching it open. The night air met him, empty and still. He stepped onto the small back landing. The grass lay undisturbed. No prints marked the bare earth beneath the step. He slammed the door, the bolt rasping home. Sleep remained elusive, hostage to the relentless drip, drip, drip from within the walls. Around midnight, defeated, he rose, sweeping the beam of a flashlight through the oppressive dark. He retraced his steps, probing corners, rapping knuckles against plaster, listening intently. The aqueous rhythm remained constant, neither waxing nor waning, mocking his search. No moisture revealed itself, no telltale damp patches. Exhausted, he retreated to the lumpy mattress. Rest was fragmented, punctuated by the soft scuff of unseen footsteps circling the exterior, the familiar groan of the porch planks, and now, a new texture of sound, a dry, rasping friction, like coarse fabric dragged against wood. Once, a low groan resonated through the floor, less animal than the tortured shifting of immense weight. When morning finally broke, Silas immediately sought out the scarecrows. His breath hitched. One had trespassed. It now stood unnervingly close, planted beside a listing wooden post, perhaps 20 yards from his front porch. Its straw-stuffed head was tilted distinctly upward, its blank gaze seemingly fixed upon him. A visceral recoil twisted his insides. He stared, transfixed, before marching directly toward it. The tactile reality remained unchanged. Desiccated straw, weathered clothes, the unyielding stake anchoring it. He gripped its shoulder, throwing his weight into pulling it free. It wouldn't budge, rooted fast in the earth. Frustration curdled into fear. He retreated to the house, pacing the creaking floorboards like a caged animal. A desperate plan formed. He retrieved his phone, intending to capture proof. Positioning it carefully in the front window, aimed toward the fields, he initiated a video recording, hoping the lens might witness what his eyes had missed. The scarecrow's secret animation, or perhaps something else entirely. As a further precaution, he barricaded the doors, wedging chairs beneath the knobs, stacking a small table against the back entrance. A futile gesture, perhaps, but it offered a sliver of control. Every window latch was secured. Then, he settled in the dim living room to wait, the only light a weak pool from a distant lamp. The silence pressed in. He tapped a nervous rhythm with his foot, felt the clammy dampness bloom on his palms, his breath catching shallowly in his chest. The inevitable creak of the porch announced the night's next act. Silas snatched the flashlight, stabbing its beam through the window. The warped planks visibly dipped, yet remained stubbornly empty. Then came the scraping along the exterior wall, a sound like skeletal branches clawing at the siding, though no trees grew close enough. Drawn by a dreadful premonition, he checked the back door. The spectral face reappeared, pressed hard against the glass. This time it held its form longer, allowing him to discern more. Vacant, hollow sockets where eyes should be. The delicate bridge of a nose. A mouth sealed thin. Features rendered in smoke and suggestion. The fine hairs on his arms lifted. His pulse hammered against his ribs. He centered the flashlight beam directly on the apparition. It remained impassive, an image superimposed on the night. "Who's there?" he yelled, his voice cracking. No response. He flattened his palm against the door. The glass felt unnaturally cold beneath his touch. Abruptly, as if erased, the face vanished. He threw the door open to absolute stillness. Absolute silence. The slam of the door echoed finality. He fumbled for his phone, desperate for connection. No signal. Cursing, he ventured outside, standing beside the cold metal of his car, arm raised hopefully toward the indifferent sky. Still nothing. Utter isolation. The fields stretched away, silent under the moon. The scarecrows seemed to have receded, artifacts in a landscape suddenly vast and empty. The hunched shape from the fence line was absent. No tracks disturbed the dew-kissed ground. He forced himself to breathe, to quell the rising panic. Retreating inside, he resolved to outlast the darkness, nursing lukewarm water in the dim living room, listening. The phantom dripping ebbed and flowed, sometimes seeming to emanate from inches away, other times fading to a barely audible pulse. Around 3 a.m, the sound returned, that profound sigh from the fields, long and impossibly heavy, like the exhalation of the earth itself. He crept to the window. The grass was alive again, rippling in unnatural waves, suggesting some immense, unseen presence stirring beneath. The undulations flowed toward the house, then receded, a silent tide. He checked the phone's recording. Static pixels stared back. The scarecrows stood fixed in their recorded positions. The fields appeared barren. He rewound, replayed, scrutinized. Nothing. Frustration warred with exhaustion, a dull ache throbbing behind his eyes. Daylight. He needed daylight to parse this madness. With the dawn came a fragile resolve. Silas walked the perimeter, the dampness soaking through his shoes. The scarecrows maintained their positions from the previous morning. Yet subtle discrepancies nagged at him. An arm angled slightly higher, a hat canted at a fractionally different degree. Or was it merely his frayed perception? Touching them yielded only the familiar textures of straw and cloth. He traced the fence line, peered into the silent stand of trees. The ground offered no clues, yielding softly in some patches, remaining firm in others, but bearing no distinct impressions beyond his own. The porch steps were innocent. Beneath the porch itself lay only packed earth, draped cobwebs, and a scattering of brittle leaves. He dedicated the day to a meticulous, almost forensic examination of the farmhouse itself. Every closet yielded its mundane secrets. Every drawer surrendered its contents. Rusted tools, forgotten cleaning agents, threadbare blankets. Nothing overtly sinister. Yet the infernal dripping persisted. He located the main water valve outside and wrestled it shut. The dripping continued, undeterred. He pounded on the walls, raising clouds of dust but provoking no telltale moisture. A perilous climb into the cramped attic revealed only dust motes dancing in stray beams of light, stacked cardboard boxes, and dry, ancient floorboards. No leaks, no source. On the fourth night, exhaustion granted him a few hours of troubled sleep before he jolted awake near midnight, slick with sweat. He sat bolt upright, listening. The porch was active again, the creaks falling into a distinct rhythm, the sound of pacing, slow and deliberate. Silas crept to the window, heart hammering. He watched the floorboards depress and rebound, marking invisible footfalls. No one was there. He flicked on the flashlight. The movement ceased instantly. He doused the light. After a taut moment, the spectral pacing resumed. A cold dread tightened around his chest. It felt calculated, a game played by unseen rules. Jaw clenched, he backed away from the window, retreating deeper into the room. Later, a flicker of motion near the fence line snagged his attention. He recognized it instantly. The shambling, hunched silhouette, disproportionately large. It darted between two skeletal trees, its long legs covering the ground with unnerving speed, its arms dangling low. It moved with impossible swiftness and utter silence. Silas swallowed, the sound loud in his own ears, standing rigidly behind the glass, scarcely breathing. The figure scuttled back and forth along the tree line several times before melting into the deeper darkness. He must have drifted off on the couch, slumped in weary defeat. Consciousness returned with the first pale fingers of dawn, painting the dusty windows. The air in the house felt thick, used up. He pushed open the front door and stepped into the cool morning air. His eyes shot to the wooden post where the nearest scarecrow had stood. Empty. Only the naked stake remained, protruding obscenely from the earth. No stray wisps of straw, no torn scraps of fabric littered the ground. He spun around, his gaze sweeping the vast, silent fields. And there, near the far edge of the property, huddled with its two companions, stood the missing sentinel. The trio was complete once more, reunited. All three now squarely faced the farmhouse, their hats pulled low, their stick arms held stiffly at their sides. A silent, unnerving tableau. A tremor started in his hands, his legs suddenly feeling unreliable. Enough. He was leaving. The manuscript, the solitude, none of it mattered anymore. Survival did. He threw clothes haphazardly into duffels, snatched the laptop, slammed and locked the stubborn front door behind him. At the car, Stuffing his bags inside, he allowed himself one final, sweeping glance across the property. Deceptive normality had returned. The scarecrows stood immobile, inscrutable. The grass lay placid. The porch timbers were silent. Inside the house, he imagined, the dripping had ceased. Sunlight glinted off the vacant windows. He slid behind the wheel, the engine catching with a reassuring roar. He didn't spare the farmhouse another look as he pulled away, watching it diminish in the rearview mirror until it was swallowed by the landscape. His eyes scanned the periphery, the tree lines, the ditches, but the world outside the car seemed ordinary now. He left it all behind. The groaning timbers, the phantom dripping, the migrating sentinels, the faces pressed to cold glass. Miles down the road, his phone chimed, bars of signal flooding the screen. He ignored it. There was nothing to say, no one to tell. He just drove, hands gripping the wheel, gaze fixed firmly ahead, consciously purging the memory of slow creaks, chilling apparitions, and the vast, sighing emptiness of the fields. He kept moving forward. My life was a fortress against intrusion, meticulously constructed. A phone secured by labyrinthine codes, correspondence shredded to confetti post-reading, computer displays angled perpetually away from prying eyes. These were the bulwarks of my existence. Solitude wasn't just desired, it was curated. Then came the sprawling, antiquated mansion, a purchase promising profound isolation, the silence I craved. What I found instead was an unnerving, pervasive scrutiny, emanating from something unseen, inexplicable. Weeks have bled into one another since my arrival. The house looms on its hill, encircled by iron fencing scabbed with rust near the gate's maw. Neglect clung to it like ivy, yet its bones felt strong, its walls thick, enclosing a warren of rooms beyond easy counting. The handover was abrupt. The former occupant fled, leaving a legacy of heavy furniture, funereal draperies, and mirrors. An astonishing proliferation of mirrors. Every chamber harbored at least one, often more. Sentinels on clawed feet with brooding wooden frames, wall-mounted rectangles edged in chipped gilt, sleek modern panes devoid of ornament, a veritable gallery of reflection. That first evening, traversing the echoing foyer into the cavernous main drawing room, I coaxed life from a towering floor lamp. Its bulb sputtered, a brief electrical spasm, before casting a steady, amber glow. Above the cold hearth, a large mirror beckoned. Scratches marred its surface like fine scars, but the woman staring back was undeniably me. A shrug dismissed the prickling unease as the natural consequence of inhabiting such vast, empty spaces. Ancient floorboards groaned beneath my weight, protesting the intrusion. The air hung thick with the scent of dust and time's slow decay. Then, a sound. A delicate tap, scrape. Brief as a fingernail drawn across glass. My head snapped around. Nothing. A branch, I rationalized, rapping against a distant window pane. Morning found me wrestling with a stiff neck, victim of a bed too grand and a mattress possessed of geological lumps. Parting the heavy bedroom curtains, I flooded the room with pale light. Across the expanse, a monumental mirror drank in the dawn, and for a disorienting heartbeat, I perceived a presence tethered to my reflection, a shape superimposed, subtly misaligned with my own contours. I spun, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The room stood empty, silent. My palms grew slick with sudden sweat. A trick of the light, I insisted inwardly. A figment born of shadow and sleep-drugged eyes. Descending the stairs towards the promise of coffee, I tried to shake the lingering chill. The remainder of the day became an exercise in cartography, mapping the mansion's labyrinthine depths. Corridors unfurled like forgotten scrolls. Countless doors yielded storerooms choked with the detritus of lives past. And mirrors. Always mirrors. Diminutive ovals leaning casually in corners. Tall pier glasses shrouded in spectral dust sheets. Ornate monstrosities framed with carved garlands and serpentine flourishes. The sheer quantity defied easy tally. Dozens, perhaps scores. Unveiling each one sent a jolt, a nervous system anticipating ambush. Nothing ever materialized, yet the sight of my own duplicated self became increasingly unsettling. Dinner was a solitary affair at a small table commandeered in the kitchen. This room, too, possessed its looking glass, positioned above the sink, reflecting ranks of cupboards and a slice of the aged stove. Raising a glass of water, my gaze drifted to the mirrored surface. Movement flickered, not mine. The reflected figure, my doppelganger, executed a slight sideways shift while I remained utterly still. My hand convulsed, water sloshing onto the worn countertop. Setting the glass down with a clatter, I leaned closer, peering intently. Only cabinets and stove regarded me now, placid and mundane. My pulse, however, refused to settle. Wiping the spill, I resolved to attribute it to fatigue, to the house's unsettling influence. Sleep proved elusive that night. I lay beneath the oppressive weight of the ceiling, the bedside lamp burning defiantly against the encroaching dark. The mansion murmured around me, the settling groans of old timber, sporadic soft thuds from indeterminate locations. At one juncture, a sound like fabric brushing against my bedroom door sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through me. I lay rigid, breath held captive in my chest. Eventually, summoning courage, I rose and eased the door open. The hallway stretched away, dimly lit by a single, feeble fixture at its terminus. My eyes were drawn inexorably to the tall mirror mounted opposite my doorway, its frame a riot of carved wood. I ventured out, each footstep placed with excruciating care to avoid betraying creaks. Scanning the dimness, I saw only my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed, the open bedroom door yawning behind it in the glass. My chest constricted, air seemingly too thick to draw. Then a whisper, intimate and chillingly close, like breath beside my ear, the words indistinguishable. I whirled, finding only empty air. Turning back to the mirror, my reflection appeared unchanged, yet deep within its silver depths. A flicker. A shadow slipping along the reflected hallway wall behind me, though the actual corridor remained vacant. The ensuing days were consumed by a campaign of concealment. Old sheets, spare towels, salvaged cardboard, anything to obscure the ubiquitous glass. It was a frustrating, almost futile endeavor. Coverings would inexplicably detach, falling limp to the floor. Nails refused purchase, bending bizarrely. Tape lost its adhesion. A peculiar resistance emanated from the mirrors themselves, as if they actively repelled attempts to blind them. More surfaced in unexpected locales, one lurking inside a closet door, another secreted within a shadowy alcove beneath the main staircase. Each discovery delivered a fresh internal shock. The sensation of being watched intensified, a constant prickle on my skin, irrespective of whether I was navigating a hallway or locked within the supposed privacy of the bathroom. Eyes unseen, perpetually trained on my back. One afternoon, a dull thud echoed from a storage room at the far end of the second-floor corridor. Pushing open the door, I found a large rectangular mirror lying face up on the dusty floorboards. It hadn't been there yesterday. I distinctly recalled propping it against the far wall. Its surface possessed an antique waviness, distorting the light. Crouching, I peered into its depths. My face gazed back, subtly warped, features rippling as if underwater. And behind my reflection, something moved. A swift, dark passage from one edge of the glass to the other. Too rapid to discern detail, yet undeniably humanoid in its fleeting shape. A cold numbness crept into my hands. I sprang upright, spinning around. The room offered only a broken chair, stacked boxes filmed with grime, an old dresser. My heart battered against my ribs as I fought for steady breaths. This mirror couldn't stay here. Grasping its edges, I hefted it, surprisingly heavy, straining my arms, and carried it into the hallway, propping it against the wall just outside the storage room door. A knot of dread tightened in my gut. I didn't want it with me, yet leaving it prone in that room felt worse. No sooner had I stepped back than a soft grating sound reached me, wood against plaster. I turned. The mirror was tilting slowly, deliberately, settling at an oblique angle, reflecting a fractured slice of the corridor. I left it, resolving uneasily to haul it to the basement later. That evening, seeking refuge in the drawing room, I attempted distraction via the television. The reception dissolved into a blizzard of static, its insistent hiss grating on already frayed nerves. I silenced it. The mirror above the fireplace reclaimed my attention. The house settled into a deeper quiet, punctuated only by the random pops and creaks of its ancient structure. I lit another lamp in the corner, bathing the room in overlapping pools of light, a flimsy defense against the encroaching shadows. Perched on the edge of the sofa, my gaze oscillated between the inert screen of my phone and the reflective surface above the mantel. Then, I saw it. A nebulous form coalescing in the mirror's depths, positioned precisely where the hallway entrance behind me lay. My muscles locked, sweat beaded on my forehead. Rising stiffly, I approached the fireplace, forcing myself to confront the glass. My reflection was pale, hair escaping its confines, eyes stark with apprehension. Behind that reflected image, the actual doorway to the hall appeared empty, yet the mirror hinted otherwise, a peripheral shimmer, a suggestion of movement just beyond the frame. I recoiled, averting my gaze. The tension in the house was a physical weight, pressing down, suffocating. My mind churned, grasping for rational explanations. A hidden passage, a secret cohabitant, yet no evidence supported such theories. No forced locks, no unexplained footprints, nothing tangible. Only the mirrors and the unsettling anomalies they presented. My nights devolved into restless vigils, punctuated by abrupt awakenings in cold sweat, phantom noises evaporating the moment I rose to investigate. After a week besieged by this subtle torment, I changed tactics. A trip to town yielded armfuls of blackout curtaining. Back in the mansion's oppressive silence, I measured and cut, fashioning opaque shrouds for the largest, most prominent mirrors. Securing them with nails became another unnerving ritual. Each hammer blow transmitted a peculiar vibration through the glass, not the expected sharp report, but a low, resonant shudder, as if the mirror itself recoiled. Finally, the task was done. A fragile sense of relief washed over me. No reflections, distorted or otherwise, met my gaze. Perhaps I dared to hope coexistence was possible. The following morning shattered that fragile hope. 2 of the blackout curtains lay in shredded heaps on the floor. The nails remained embedded in the walls, but bent at grotesque angles, testaments to a violent, unseen force. Fury mingled with a rising tide of fear. I'd heard nothing. The doors remained locked, the windows intact. No ingress, no egress. Yet the fabric was undeniably torn. Grimly, I set about recovering the exposed glass. As I pressed the heavy material against the cool surface, an icy draft caressed the back of my neck, though every window in the vicinity was sealed tight. I hammered the nails with renewed ferocity, driving them deeper this time, my arms aching, sweat staining my eyes. A morbid part of me anticipated a hand reaching out from the silvered plane, but only the cold, impassive surface met my efforts. Eventually, the mirror was blinded once more. I moved on to the next. Around midday, I sank onto a bench in the foyer, needing respite, rubbing a persistent ache in my shoulder. That's when I noticed it. The large oval mirror near the front door, which I'd meticulously draped with a heavy woolen blanket, was now bare. The blanket lay crumpled in a distant corner, a discarded skin. I froze, a cold dread solidifying in my stomach. My efforts were utterly futile. Something in this house wanted. The mirrors uncovered, wanted to watch. The skin on my scalp prickled. Wiping my damp face on my sleeve, I retrieved the blanket, my movements leaden, and forced myself to rehang it. This time I secured the edges with strips of thick duct tape, pressing them down with fierce determination. I braced myself for the sound of ripping fabric, the sight of the blanket flying off again, but for the moment, it held. Ascending the main staircase, I paused. A faint, peculiar clinking sound drifted down from the second floor. It ceased the moment I stopped moving. Cautiously, heart thudding a heavy counterpoint to my silent footsteps, I continued upwards. The upper hallway was swallowed in gloom, relieved only by the weak overhead bulb. The mirror I'd dragged from the storage room remained canted against the wall. Approaching it felt like wading through unseen resistance. My reflection swam into view, elongated, grotesque. A knot formed low in my belly. Leaning closer, I saw my face twisted, features subtly but disturbingly wrong. Then behind my distorted image, movement, swift and definite. I recoiled, spinning, finding only the empty, silent corridor stretching away in both directions. Frustration warred with stark terror. My breathing grew ragged, shallow. Pacing now, scanning the closed doors, desperate for any sign, any clue. Another sound, a low scrape, like something heavy dragged across floorboards. Turning the corner into an intersecting passage, I confronted a mirror I hadn't registered before. It stood on a low wooden easel, positioned to command views down both converging halls. This one was uncovered. A film of dust coated its ornate frame, and starkly visible in the center of the glass, a single handprint. I stared, mesmerized. It wasn't my hand. The print seemed larger, the fingers spaced wider. My pulse hammered in my ears. I swiped at it compulsively with my shirt sleeve, but the greasy smudge remained, seemingly impressed upon the glass from the other side. Glancing down the left corridor, then the right, nothing. Emptiness. I backed away slowly, unwilling to meet my own reflection again. My legs felt unsteady, tremulous. A simultaneous wave of sweat and chill washed over me. Leaving that hallway felt imperative. I retreated hastily towards the stairs, casting frantic glances over my shoulder, half expecting to see a pursuing reflection, a shape materializing at the edge of my vision. Downstairs, I snatched my jacket and fled outside, gulping the cold, damp air on the porch. Above, the sky pressed down, a uniform sheet of gray. Wind sighed through the skeletal branches of the surrounding trees. My thoughts raced, frantic and disorganized. Hire someone to remove them all. Smash them, one by one. But a deep, instinctual fear recoiled from that notion, a sense of potential, disastrous consequences, and the thought of inviting anyone else into whatever watched from the glass, felt like a betrayal, not just to my own guarded nature, but of some unspoken duty to contain this phenomenon. As daylight began to leach from the sky, the inevitable truth asserted itself. I had to go back inside. The house was mine. Running wasn't an option, not yet. Re-entering felt like stepping back into a predator's cage. I forced myself on a grim patrol, room by room, checking the mirror coverings. Some held fast, others had slipped, sagged, or bore subtle signs of tampering. My nerves were raw, exposed wires. Every mirror pulsed with a latent energy, a silent, watchful malevolence. My attempts to suppress them only seemed to heighten the agitation, like poking a slumbering beast. Night has fallen completely now. I'm sequestered in the master bedroom, the door locked, a single lamp casting long, dancing shadows. I sit on the edge of the bed, this notepad open on my lap, chronicling these unnerving events. Soft, scraping sounds whisper from the hallway beyond the door. My gaze keeps flicking involuntarily towards the large mirror on the opposite wall. I draped it meticulously with a thick sheet hours ago. Yet even now, I can see the fabric at the corners beginning to curl outwards, as if invisible fingers are plucking at it from behind. My hands tremble as I write. My mouth is dessert dry. I swallow repeatedly, a futile attempt to anchor myself. What resides within these countless panes of silvered glass, I cannot fathom. Why this house serves as their repository remains a chilling mystery. All I know is the suffocating sense of entrapment, the ceaseless weight of observation. With every blink, I imagine a figure coalescing in the space just behind me, patiently waiting. All that remains is to cling to the fraying edges of my sanity, hoping for either adaptation or escape. For now, I am trapped in the creaking darkness, perpetually uncertain if the face staring back from the glass is truly my own anymore. My headlamp's solitary lance pierced the Stygian gloom, carving a slender corridor through what felt like the planet's deepest entrails. Air, thick as velvet and tasting of grit, carried the sepulchral perfume of secrets long interred. A measured inhalation did little to quell the frantic drummer in my chest. This was the threshold, the fabled, forgotten copper lode, sealed from the sun for more than 100 years. We stood upon its doorstep. Yet, as the encroaching silence would soon whisper, some doors remain closed for sound reasons. Are you truly certain, Kaelin? Alara's query ricocheted from the weeping stone, a fragile chime of thrill laced with dread. I pivoted, facing my companions. Ilara, Ronan, Lyra. Their features starkly illuminated by the cyclopean eyes of our lamps were masks of pallor, sculpted by apprehension and the ubiquitous film of subterranean dust. "Friends, come now," I urged, striving for a resonant confidence I didn't wholly possess. "Months we've plotted this venture. Retreat is unthinkable now." Candidly, my own nerves frayed beneath the bravado. We were seasoned trekkers, undeniably, but novices in the art of plumbing the Earth's hidden veins. The mind's maw, swallowed by a riot of tenacious greenery, existed on no chart we owned. Serendipity, or perhaps a more deliberate hand of fate, had guided our boots to this concealed wound in the hillside. Ronan, ever the anchor of pragmatism in our quartet, shifted his weight. "I'm uneasy, Kalen. The structure feels precarious. Shouldn't we report this? Allow the professionals their due?" A sharp shake of my head. "And forfeit the discovery. Relinquish the glory. Unacceptable. We unearthed this relic. Its first modern exploration belongs to us." Lyra, usually the most circumspect among us, astonished me with a decisive nod. "Kalen speaks sense. An opportunity like this is singular. I vote we proceed." Ilara's gaze remained clouded with uncertainty, yet after a protracted moment, her shoulders squared. She gave a curt nod. "Very well, but we remain a unit. No solitary excursions. Understood?" Thus resolved, our descent commenced. The passage angled downwards, its flanks shored up by ancient timbers that groaned like arthritic giants under the mountain's immense pressure. Our lamps threw elongated, capering silhouettes against the rock, specters that seemed to resent our trespass into this time-locked domain. Deeper we pressed, and echoes of the mine's bustling past materialized from the shadows. Corroded pickaxes lay discarded alongside skeletal shovels. Here and there, the fossilized remains of ore carts squatted, their wheels seized by the rust of generations. "Astounding," Lyra breathed, her archaeologist's sensibility absorbing every nuance. "It's akin to stepping through a temporal veil." I couldn't dispute her assessment. Despite the enveloping blackness, the claustrophobia, and a persistent, nagging intuition that we were profoundly unwelcome, a current of exhilaration surged through me. We were the first souls in a century to witness this subterranean tableau. An hour, perhaps more, dissolved into the rhythmic crunch of our boots before the tunnel bifurcated. Two tenebrous maws yawned before us, offering no hint of their destinations. "Direction?" Ilara inquired, sweeping her light down each potential route. I withdrew the brittle map procured from the town's dusty archives. Its surface was a tapestry of fading ink and creases, a cryptic guide at best. After a moment's scrutiny, my finger indicated the leftward passage. This route. If my interpretation holds, it should guide us toward the primary excavation cavern. Onward we pushed, the tunnel constricted, the air growing heavier, dust motes dancing thickly in our beams. A profound quiet reigned, punctuated only by our footfalls and the sporadic, melancholic drip of unseen water. Abruptly, Ronan halted, so suddenly that Lyra collided softly with his back. "Did you perceive that?" His voice was a mere thread of sound. We froze, straining against the silence. For an instant, only the frantic pulse in my own ears registered. Then, subtly, it reached me. A low, subterranean growl, reminiscent of thunder on a distant horizon. Likely just airflow, I offered, attempting to placate my own rising unease as much as theirs. Forward, we must be nearing our goal. Yet, as we advanced, the rumbling intensified. Tiny pebbles began to jitterbug across the tunnel floor. A fine powder sifted down from the unseen ceiling. Kaelin. Alara's voice was taut, strung with genuine fear. I strongly advocate turning back. I was poised to concur when the narrow passage abruptly disgorged us into an immense void. Our headlamps faltered, unable to find purchase on the distant walls or the cavern's ceiling, creating the unnerving sensation of standing upon the precipice of nothingness. "This is it," I whispered, awestruck. "The heart of the mine." As our vision acclimated, shapes began to coalesce from the gloom. Colossal, rust-eaten machinery loomed like dormant behemoths. Mounds of scree and fallen rock sculpted in alien topography. And there, capturing my beam with a seductive gleam, snaked a rich vein of copper ore embedded within the rock face. We had located it, the elusive motherlode that had mocked generations of miners. Our elation, however, proved ephemeral. The rumbling, which had subsided into a background thrum, suddenly crescendoed. The very ground beneath us commenced a violent trembling. "Seismic event!" Ronan yelled, but a deeper dread told me this was something worse. Decades of abandonment, the crushing weight of the earth, compounded by our intrusion, had fatally undermined the mine's fragile integrity. It was surrendering. "Move!" I roared, already spinning back toward the tunnel's relative safety. We scrambled frantically back along our path, the rumbling escalating into a deafening cacophony. Stones began to rain down, initially small, then graduating to lethal chunks. Lyra cried out sharply as one struck her shoulder, but pausing was not an option. The tunnel seemed to warp, twisting in configurations I failed to recall from our ingress. Had we blundered onto a wrong path? The dust choked the air, rendering our headlamps nearly impotent, their beams slicing through the maelstrom in disorienting flashes as we fled. A particularly savage tremor threw us all from our feet. Scrabbling upright, a cold horror washed over me. I could no longer see the others. Elara, Ronan, Lyra. My voice rasped, raw from the dust. "Here," Alara's reply came faint, muffled. Guiding myself with a hand against the vibrating wall, I stumbled towards the sound. I found her helping Lyra rise. Lyra's face was a mess of tears and grime, her arm cradled protectively. "Where is Ronan?" I demanded, the question heavy with foreboding. Elara shook her head, her eyes vast pools of terror. "I don't know. The tremor separated us when we fell." Another violent shudder racked the tunnel. More rock showered down. Stagnation and burial. "Ronan!" I bellowed one final time, straining to hear any response above the mine's agonized groans. Silence answered, my heart leaden, I seized Alara's hand. We must leave. Now. We ran, half-sighted, through the disintegrating passage. Each footfall courted disaster. Every subterranean roar potentially heralded the final, crushing embrace of the earth. Just as exhaustion threatened to claim us, I glimpsed it. A pale, ethereal glimmer of natural light ahead. The exit. Summoning a final reserve of strength, we surged towards it. Rocks cascaded around us now. The entire mountain seemed to heave in its death throes. We erupted from the tunnel mouth and continued running, not daring to halt until we were a significant distance from the entrance. Turning, we witnessed the hillside itself appear to convulse, before imploding inwards, vomiting a colossal plume of dust skyward. We stood, lungs burning, bodies coated in grime and stinging from countless minor lacerations, alive, but profoundly shaken.
Ronan,
Lyra wept, clutching her injured arm.
He remains within.
The brutal reality began to crystallize. We had breached that mine 4 strong, bound by the thrill of exploration. Now, only 3 stood on the surface, fractured and bruised. As the dust cloud began its slow descent, a sound pierced the aftermath, jolting our hearts. A ragged cough, originating from the vicinity of the obliterated entrance. We rushed forward, hope a fragile Bugan to be trusted thing. And there he was, Ronan, clawing his way out from beneath a fallen tree, whose trunk had miraculously shielded him from the main force of the collapse. He was caked in dust, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, but undeniably alive. We helped him stand, the 4 of us momentarily struck dumb by overwhelming relief and shock. We had survived, though the margin was perilously thin. The mine, its coveted riches and shadowed history, was gone, reinterred beneath countless tons of rock and soil. As we navigated the slow path back toward the world of the living, my thoughts turned to the miners who had preceded us. How many souls had been claimed by this mountain's insatiable hunger? How many had glimpsed that fatal, alluring glint of copper and pressed onward, heedless of the peril, only to be consumed whole by the earth? Fortune had smiled upon us. We escaped with our lives, though not unmarked. The ordeal had irrevocably altered us. We sought adventure, perhaps fortune, but unearthed instead a brutal lesson in nature's indifferent power and the stark fragility of our own existence. The lost copper mine would remain lost, its secrets now buried deeper than any pickaxe could reach. And we, the impetuous explorers who dared awaken its slumber, would forever bear the weight of that descent. Some things we now understood with chilling clarity are infinitely better left undiscovered. The percussive rhythm of my soul striking asphalt echoed, a solitary beat against the park's spectral quietude. Lunar light, strained through skeletal branches, painted elongated specters across the path. Just another nocturnal exertion, I'd presumed. Yet, rounding the curve by the derelict fountain, ice traced my vertebrae. Pursuit. Elias, that's the name I answer to. 32 orbits around the sun, architect of digital realms, and until this night, merely a man striving for fitness through habitual twilight runs. For years, this precise circuit through Briarwood Park had been mine, persisting even after municipal neglect frayed its edges and dimmed its lamps. The isolation, the peculiar thrill of navigating ill-lit ways. These were the draws. Tonight, however, resonated differently. An unsettling awareness had clung to me since stepping beneath the park's brooding canopy. A prickling sense of observation, dismissed initially. Phantom jitters born of caffeine excess and sleep deficit. Now, the undeniable cadence of footfalls mirroring my own confirmed instinct's stark warning. My pace surged, a frantic drum against my ribs. Behind me, the pursuing rhythm accelerated, closing the gap. A backward glance, risked breathlessly, revealed a tenebrous shape 50 yards distant, devouring the intervening space. My mind, a frantic cartographer, plotted escape routes through familiar terrain. The main entrance, a distant sanctuary, lay a mile off. Closer, though, a secondary egress beckoned. If I reached it, light, streets, the mundane safety of late-opening storefronts. I broke from the worn path, slicing across a dew-slicked meadow. Treacherous footing threatened balance. Damp grass clung. Behind, the pursuit abandoned stealth, crashing through unseen undergrowth. The side gate materialized, a dark promise in the gloom. Hope surged, then fractured. Chains, thick and final, bound it shut. A padlock, freshly minted, gleamed under the moon's cold scrutiny. Since when? That pause, that fatal hesitation, allowed the footsteps to gain, growing loud, immediate. I pivoted, spine pressed hard against the unyielding metal, bracing for confrontation. From the deepest shadows, the figure emerged. Recognition jolted. A man glimpsed lingering near the park's threshold as my run began. Average build, forgettable attire, yet his gaze held a disquieting intensity that had registered even then. Steady, he breathed, voice incongruously level. No harm intended, just need a word. A word, I gasped, lungs aching. You hunt me through a lightless park for conversation. He raised his hands, palms out, a gesture of appeasement. The optics are bad, I grant you, but I needed certainty that you were alone. It's not safe out here. Not anymore. Not with recent events. Confusion warred with lingering fear, momentarily gaining ground. Events. What are you talking about? His eyes darted nervously, scanning the surrounding darkness before he leaned closer, voice dropping. The vanishings. 3 souls this past month alone, all last sighted within or near Briarwood's perimeter. The authorities are keeping it hushed, but something's stirring here. Something wrong. Whispers. Yes. I'd caught fragments. Rumors of missing persons. Unsubstantiated. Absent from headlines. How could you know this? My wariness remained, yet curiosity gnawed. Because I witnessed it, he answered, his tone sinking to a conspiratorial whisper. The last one. A woman. Running. Same as you. Present one moment, then erased. As if the shadows themselves had inhaled her. A chill, independent of the night air, permeated me. Impossible, I counted. sounds mad, I know. But I've been watching this place, trying to understand. I think I'm close, which is why I had to intercept you. You're walking into the jaws of it. One part of me screamed denial, urged flight, a desperate sprint towards home and willful ignorance. But his earnestness, the raw desperation etching his features, compelled attention. And hadn't I, if truly honest, sensed a recent wrongness in the park? A palpable weight in the atmosphere, the persistent illusion of being watched. All right, I conceded, the word emerging slow, measured. Suppose I entertain this. What's the next move? Relief flickered across his face. We locate the nexus. My observations point to the old groundskeeper's shed, deep in the park's heart. Anomalous lights, strange acoustics, activity. Hesitation gripped me. Every nerve shrieked retreat. Go home. Lock the door. Forget. Yet the image of the vanished runner, of other families suspended in unknowing grief. Inaction felt like complicity. Fine, I heard myself say, surprised at the steadiness anchoring my voice. Lead the way. Deeper we plunged into Briarwood's shadowed core, hugging the gloom. Movement hushed. He introduced himself as Silas, formerly employed as the park's custodian until austerity measures severed his post. His connection lingered, compelling him to monitor the grounds he'd once tended. Approaching the park's center, subtleties I'd previously ignored now screamed for attention. Cryptic sigils carved into ancient bark, unlike any vandal's tag. Barren patches where flora refused to root. An unsettling, subliminal hum emanating from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The maintenance shed rose before us, a decrepit silhouette against the lesser dark, seemingly abandoned for decades. Yet, as we drew near, a faint luminescence bled from beneath its warped door. Silas pressed a finger to his lips, beckoning me onward. We crept to a grimy window pane peering into the shrouded interior. The sight within froze the marrow. The expected tableau of rust and cobwebs was absent. Instead, the cramped space pulsed with alien machinery, intricate and glowing. At its heart churned a vortex of pure light, a shimmering laceration in the fabric of existence. And entities moved within its radius, shapes that resisted focus, geometries that shifted and writhed in defiance of natural law. As I watched, transfixed by horror, one reached into the swirling rift and extracted a form. Humanoid, limp, unconscious, or perhaps worse. I recoiled, stumbling backward, reality buckling. A hallucination, light playing tricks. Silas's grim profile stark beside me mirrored my own horrified disbelief. He saw it too. This has to be stopped, he whispered, urgency roughening his voice. Whatever this is, whatever they intend for those people, it ends now. I nodded numbly, terror a suffocating presence. How? It's just us against that. Silas produced a compact device from his jacket. EMP, he stated flatly, should disrupt whatever powers that tear. One chance is all we'll get. darkness. Two ordinary men against forces ripped from nightmares. Yet, the thought of the missing, the potential for more victims swallowed by this anomaly, it galvanized resolve. A plan, crude and desperate, formed between ragged breaths. Silas would create a diversion, draw the entity's attention. I would infiltrate, plant the electromagnetic pulse device near the central mechanism. Simple. Terrifying. Action erupted in a disorienting rush. Silas flung the shed door wide, shouting, flailing. The entities turned, their impossible forms rippling. Surprise. I surged inside, hand trembling as I armed the EMP. Just as I reached to place it, one entity perceived me. It emitted a sound that wasn't sound, a vibration that resonated deep within my bones. It lunged, impossibly swift. I slammed the device onto the nearest console, thumb jabbing the trigger. An instant of charged silence. Then, pandemonium. Machines spat sparks, ozone stinging the air. The vortex imploded, its gravitational pull intensifying, dragging everything towards its collapsing center. The entities shrieked, forms twisting, contorting as they were inexorably drawn into the vanishing rift. Silas's hand clamped onto my arm, hauling me towards the exit. We fled, not daring a backward glance as blinding light consumed the shed. The earth shuddered violently beneath us. I braced for annihilation. Then, abrupt silence. We found ourselves sprawled on the damp grass, breath tearing through raw throats. Behind us, the maintenance shed stood, a smoking ruin, terrifyingly, blessedly mundane. In the ensuing days, explanations remained elusive. Police investigated the charred remnants, finding only evidence of an intense fire. The missing individuals reappeared, scattered, bewildered, their memories wiped clean, yet physically unscathed. Silas and I met sporadically, attempting to assemble the fragmented narrative, but the full truth remained tantalizingly obscure. What I know is this: my nocturnal runs are irrevocably altered. Each time the laces are tied, it's not mere exercise. It's vigilance, a patrol. Because the world, I now understand, conceals teeth sharper and stranger than imagination dares concede. And sometimes, all that buffers our fragile reality from encroaching chaos is a man out for a jog and a former custodian wielding a homemade disruptor. So, should you find yourself running late beneath a canopy of shadows and feel that prickle of unseen eyes, heed the warning. You can never be certain what truly stirs in the darkness. Wind screamed through the pines, a banshee shriek swallowing the ragged percussion of my breath as I plunged through the sodden, deepening gloom of the forest. My muscles screamed protest. Twin fires ignited in my lungs, and a chill mask of sweat and rainwater clung to my face. Still, inertia born of terror propelled me onward. To glance back was unthinkable. Somewhere in the swallowing darkness stalked the cabin's inhabitant, the man whose hospitality had curdled into menace, the man with the blade. This ordeal commenced as a pilgrimage, a necessary flight from the digital confines where Elias, architect of unseen code in the glass canyons of Seattle, had languished for months. At 28, the screen's glow had become a pallor on my soul, demanding the raw antidote of wilderness. The cascades beckoned, promising solace. 3 days, solo, pack-laden, spirit yearning for the untamed quietude. That was the prescription. The inaugural day unfurled exactly as envisioned. Air like chilled crystal, panoramas that stole the breath, a tranquility so profound it felt ancient. But as the second day bled towards twilight, the skies turned traitorous. Clouds gathered, bruised and swollen, unleashing a relentless, frigid deluge. Shelter became imperative, and then an apparition. Through the blurring rain, a compact structure in a small clearing, a tendril of smoke ascending from its chimney like a fragile prayer. Relief, potent and sudden, surged through me. I approached the rough-hewn door, mentally composing my petition against the elements. It groaned open, revealing a figure carved from hardship, perhaps nearing his 6th decade. His face was a cartography of wind and sun, framed by a beard streaked with gray, and his eyes, chips of glacial ice, held an unnerving stillness, seeming to penetrate beyond mere appearance. "Turned around, are ya?" His voice was gravel, yet devoid of immediate hostility. I articulated my predicament, gesturing towards the escalating tempest. He considered me then, with a grudging nod, stepped back. "Silas," he offered, the name falling flat in the sudden warmth of the cabin's interior. "Got stew on, if you've a hunger." Introducing myself as Elias, I offered effusive thanks. The single room was compact, bordering on claustrophobic, yet possessed a certain rustic sincerity. Rough sawn furniture huddled near a stone hearth, and the air was thick with the savory promise of simmering meat. While Silas tended the pot, my gaze drifted. The walls bristled with the spoils of the hunt, antlers mounted like skeletal crowns, the dense pelts of bears. But the steel, gleaming under the lamplight, knives, large and numerous, hung with a different kind of pride, displayed like cherished artifacts. We consumed the stew largely in silence, the heat a welcome balm. Silas rebuffed conversational overtures with monosyllables or taciturn grunts. Despite the undercurrent of reticence, gratitude for the refuge and the sustenance prevailed. Outside, the storm unleashed its full fury. Silas gestured towards a worn couch. "Bed down there." An offer I accepted without hesitation. Exhaustion, a leaden weight pulling me swiftly towards oblivion. The wind's symphony, a distant lullaby. What fractured the depths of sleep remains uncertain. A floorboard's complaint, perhaps, or that subconscious sentinel that shrieks when equilibrium is disturbed. My eyes snapped open to near absolute darkness, the fire reduced to a constellation of embers. As vision swam back into focus, a silhouette loomed, obsidian against the ember glow. Silas, motionless, observing. In his grasp, a familiar blade reflected the dying fire, a sliver of malevolent light. My veins turned to ice. "Shouldn't have trespassed," he murmured, the sound barely disturbing the air. "None of them should have." Sleep evaporated, replaced by a jolt of adrenaline, cold and sharp. "Whoa, what? What are you saying?" The tremor in my voice betrayed me. Silas's eyes, catching the faint pulse of the embers, seemed to ignite from within. "This here forest, she's mine. Decades now. But your kind, you keep coming, trampling, upsetting things. He shifted, a subtle movement that brought the knife's edge fractionally closer. Tried warning folks. Posted signs. Let whispers travel. Don't listen, though. Had to persuade him more directly. The implication struck with the force of a physical blow, horrifying and absolute. The trophies, not all were four-legged, and I was marked as the next addition to his collection. What followed was a maelstrom of instinct, raw and unreasoned. My legs lashed out, connecting with Silas's knee. A guttural grunt escaped him as he buckled, affording me a precious instant. I scrambled from the couch, a desperate lunge towards the door. Behind me, a roar of thwarted rage. My fingers, numb with fear, fumbled at the latch. Then, freedom. Bursting into the storm's embrace, the icy rain, a brutal shock. I fled, sightless, into the ink-black woods, branches clawing, unseen roots conspiring to ensnare me. Silas's pursuit was audible, a heavy crashing through the undergrowth, his curses torn apart by the gale. Thus began the flight, deeper into the forest's maw, directionless, guided only by the imperative to widen the distance between pursuer and pursued. Time dissolved. Minutes or hours became meaningless units in the terrifying expanse of night. Every shadow writhed with menace. Each snap of a twig heralded Silas's imminent arrival. Rain had permeated every layer, and shivering became an uncontrollable palsy. Just as exhaustion threatened complete surrender, as my legs turned to waterlogged timber, a flicker appeared. A faint, distant luminescence. Hope, fragile but fierce, lent improbable strength. I surged forward, praying it wasn't some cruel phantasm of the woods. Closer now, its form resolved. A ranger station, an outpost of order in the chaos. I practically hurled myself against the door, pounding with dwindling reserves. Help! The sound was a ragged croak, scraped raw by cold and exertion. Please, help me! The portal opened. I tumbled into the startled presence of a uniformed ranger, the narrative spilling out between chattering teeth. The storm, the cabin, Silas, the gleaming knife. The ranger's expression hardened as he absorbed the fragmented tale, swiftly drawing me inside, the heavy bolt sliding home with reassuring finality. A flurry of controlled urgency ensued. Reinforcements materialized, state troopers among them. They documented my testimony, provided dry garments and scalding coffee, dispatched a search party into the receding storm. I remained cocooned in shock, the enormity of the night's passage slowly crystallizing. As dawn painted the bruised sky with tentative light, word crackled over the radio. The cabin stood empty. Silas had vanished. Yet the search yielded ghastly corroboration. Concealed chambers beneath the floorboards, a sepulcher holding the grim relics of Silas's long reign. Remains of hikers, campers, souls swallowed by the wilderness, their fates previously attributed to accident or exposure. He had haunted these woods, I later learned, for more than 2 decades, a phantom preying on the unwary. My desperate flight had inadvertently unveiled his charnel house, yet the architect himself remained elusive. The subsequent days, the weeks, were shadowed landscapes. Nightmares became unwelcome tenants. Every sudden noise was a ricochet of fear. Therapy offered tools, the solidarity of friends and family a bulwark, but the core of me felt irrevocably altered. The forest, once a sanctuary, now whispered only of terror. 2 years have bled away since that night. I relocated, putting miles between myself and the peaks that had once sung a siren song. Work became a refuge, the predictable logic of algorithms a balm. Yet sometimes in the deep quiet of the night, the wind's lament through unseen trees finds me, and I feel the phantom caress of branches on my skin, the echo of panicked flight in the dark. Silas was never apprehended. The file remains open, a cold case gathering dust. Occasionally, the chilling thought surfaces. Is he still out there, embedded deep within the wild, patient, awaiting the next unsuspecting traveler? It's a tremor that runs bone deep. I have learned to coexist with this fear, to relegate it to the mind's periphery most days. But the memory of the cabin, of the chase, remains indelible, a stark testament to the fragility of safety, the darkness that can lurk beneath the promise of adventure. So, should your wanderings ever lead you to the Cascades, and you spy a lone cabin smoking peacefully in a clearing, resist the pull. However fierce the storm, however weary your limbs, press on. For you cannot know what or who waits within, knife poised, ready to claim another trophy.